A review of the Pocket Mini Director's Viewfinder. So for those who need a refresher, a director's viewfinder is a really handy tool to use on set that allows a director to go and check the framing of a shot without having to move all the camera equipment around. So the expensive professional ones allow you to take the lens from the camera and attach it to the viewfinder so you can pretty much move around and get any angle you want using the lenses and the sensor size and the aspect ratio that you'll be shooting on later on. It's essentially like looking through the lens of the camera without having to carry the camera around. So while these are really handy to use on set, there's an issue, which is that they're really expensive. But there is a solution, and that is using a pocket viewfinder. These are about 150 to 300 Australian dollars depending on the brand you go with, and they're designed to do the same thing as the more expensive ones, but in a much smaller and cheaper package. So today I'm going to be looking at the Alan Gordon Pocket Mini Director's Viewfinder. So there's a lot of things I like about this. The main thing is that it's constructed from a metal body, so it really feels like it's going to last you a while. I also really like that they put the sensor size equivalences on the actual barrel of the lens. So they've got Super 16, 35 and anamorphic, and then they've got two video camera formats on the back. Although I have to say, I'm a little disappointed that at this price point they didn't include micro four thirds or full frame camera formats, because you're going to have a lot of people who are using those type of hybrid cameras. The other thing I really like is that there's a really easy aspect ratio control in here, so you can really easily switch between 1:3:3, 16:9, 2:3:5:1, and it just crops the image down. So that's really handy to get a really good sense of your composition. Okay, so now I have some negative points. When I bought this thing, I also brought a light meter because I often shoot my own projects, and while I use my light meter almost all the time, this usually just sits in my bag. Now when I got this a couple of years ago, I actually showed it to another director, and his first thought summarizes why I don't use it very much. When you look through this viewfinder, the image is absolutely tiny, like you can barely see what's happening. It is the same as holding your smartphone out like this and then looking around with it. And there's a reason why people don't use their phones like this, is because the image is too small. Like why wouldn't you hold it like this? And this problem gets worse and worse as you increase the focal length. As you slowly zoom in, it's like looking at the iris effect from James Bond. The image is so small that you can like barely see what's happening. Now, I've actually thought about this, and in a certain way it's actually useful having a small image because it allows you to kind of step back, focus less on the details and more on the structure and the shapes within the image. But at the same time, when I'm filming on set, I need to look at both details and structure. I can't just look at structure. So despite the price point, having a tiny image doesn't help me very much. Now there are some alternatives to these pocket viewfinders. So for example, you can get like an app for your smartphone, but I personally don't like using my smartphone as set. I prefer to be like working in the moment and actually seeing what's happening. So in terms of recommendations, I think the only alternative you can really look at is going to like an op shop and then picking up like a $100 film camera. And after that, going on like eBay and then finding a zoom lens for it. The image through the viewfinder of a film camera is actually much larger than you would get through this, which means it's way easier to see all the details to get the best of both worlds. The only real downside is that film cameras aren't really designed specifically as a director's viewfinder, so you're going to be missing a lot of the features you might see on this. So you're going to have to do the calculations yourself, and if you want to change the aspect ratio, then you have to get like tape and then tape it to like the tiny mirror. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this as a director's viewfinder on set. It might be useful for doing a recce maybe, because you can keep things really light and you can, you know, move around a lot more. I just think the image is way too small to use on set because you can't really tell what's happening. You can only see the shapes in the image. So yeah, I definitely recommend it if you really want to look like Jack Sparrow or the guy from Mad Max with the telescope. Mad Max. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't bother with this. I'd just save up and get one of the more expensive ones.